What's going on, Aurora Alliance, and welcome to Top 10 Star Wars Games of All Time. At number 10 we have LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy. The problem with a lot of Star Wars games is they all feel a little too similar. How many times can they try to realistically recreate the Battle of Hoth or put you in the shoes of a Jedi just learning their Force powers? The answer is, as many times as they want, and frankly, I'm pretty okay with that. But sometimes a Star Wars game comes along that breaks the mold and tries a new approach to something we're all familiar with. And that's what happened with LEGO Star Wars 2. Improving on a lot of things from the first LEGO Star Wars, including better camera, more characters, and not being about the prequels, LEGO Star Wars 2 made the original trilogy a lot goofier and more fun than it had any right to be. Plus, it didn't hurt that the LEGO version of Luke, I am your father, didn't need to recreate Mark Hamill's cry face for that scene. At number 9 we have Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader. Rogue Leader was pretty much everyone's childhood dream come true. Join the fray in all of the big battles from the original trilogy, play as Wedge Antilles, and even have farm boy sociopath Luke Skywalker murder Wampa rats for no reason other than to brag about it later. The game followed up the fun but not very good looking Rogue Squadron and made an entry that was deeper and more realistic looking. The end result was a fantastic game, and the last time doing the Death Star trench run was fun in a video game. And it proved again in true Star Wars tradition, the second entry of the series is usually the best one. Number 8 we have Jedi Knight 3, Jedi Academy. Technically it should have been titled Dark Forces 4, Jedi Knight 3, Jedi Academy, but it was shortened because the forces stopped being so dark in the previous game apparently. This is the first game in the series where you didn't play as alliterative bearded Jedi, Kyle Katarn, and took a less linear approach than the previous games. Overall, it's probably the weakest game in the series, but when the weakest game is customize a Jedi warrior and get all kinds of cool lightsaber and force power stuff to mess around with, that's gotta be a good sign. At number 7 we have Republic Commando. The prequel trilogy's clone army wasn't very interesting, an army of personality-free CGI creations who had no moral quandaries with turning on Jedis when hearing a number. Really one of the soul-saving graces of their entire existence is Republic Commando, with you playing as a badass clone accompanied by fellow badass, shockingly personality-infused squad mates. The game's short and sweet, but cruelly ends with, spoiler alert, Sev, your cold as Hoth sniper, being probably killed and left behind. Who would have ever guessed a video game could do a better job with the prequel trilogy characters than George Lucas? At number 6 we have Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. In a game where the word Jedi appears twice in the title, Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast makes one fatal error. It starts you off not being a Jedi. But despite the slow start, where you're forced to use blasters and other non-lightsaber weapons, Jedi Outcast still stands well above others in Star Wars action games where you can use force powers. There's a fun, weird campaign, and the multiplayer was a perfectly mess of chaotic fun. Also Kyle Katarn, badass bearded dude who's essentially Han Solo but with Jedi powers, is pretty much all you can ask for in a protagonist in any Star Wars game. Number 5 we have The Force Unleashed. Remember watching the original trilogy and thinking, okay, but surely Darth Vader has some free time to train an apprentice while all of this other stuff is going on, somehow keeping it unbeknownst to the Emperor and pretty much everyone else, right? Okay, maybe you weren't thinking that, but The Force Unleashed decided to ask the question anyways. And good thing it did, because getting to grip down a Star Destroyer using only the Force is pretty cool. Also monstrously annoying and ridiculously tedious, but still it was pretty cool. At number 4 we have Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. With Knights of the Old Republic being one of the most enduringly popular and praised Star Wars games, which hasn't been on this list yet, expectations were increasingly high for its sequel. But with executives salivating for some cold hard credits, the game was rushed through development and released so incomplete that an entire planet was left on the cutting room floor and much of the story was rendered incomprehensible. Still, it was a pretty solid entry for a series that's seen its fair share of nightmarishly horrible games rushed to release. At number 3 we have Star Wars The Old Republic. Star Wars Galaxies was the first real attempt at a Star Wars MMO, and it was problematic. Buggy, complicated, not that fun, depending on who you asked, etc, etc. It was supposed to be the chosen one, the one who would bring balance to the world of MMOs, then and now dominated by World of Warcraft. Sadly, it was not, and had its leg sliced off and its body burnt to a crisp, and in its place was sent Star Wars The Old Republic, a BioWare developed MMO that would try some new things with the MMO world, with story and player choices / morality being touted as the things that would differentiate it from the rest of the herd. And despite solid reviews, it became one of the most high profile MMOs to go from a subscription based system to free to play. Still, it remains the Star Wars game with the most badass trailer of all time, and that means something unless you invested money in this game. At number 2 we have Battlefront. This is the first one and number 2. One day someone thought, what if we combine Battlefield with Star Wars? Like all great ideas, it was simple, brilliant, and involved shooting people with blasters on Endor. And obviously, it was a great idea being able to take part in massive Star Wars battles, both on ground and in space, take control of different vehicles, / walking robotic chickens, and fight for various factions was everything a Star Wars fan could ever dream of. But what's more, it actually managed to merge the gamer factions of people who play online shooters and people who are still obsessed with Star Wars into one incredible whole. If someone could do that for Call of Duty and JRPGs, it would be so much appreciated. And at number 1, we have Knights of the Old Republic, aka the Empire Strikes Back of Star Wars games. Made by a younger, less EA-owned BioWare, the game broke rank with practically every single other Star Wars game and moved its timeline back a few thousand years, before a certain Skywalker family became repeat offenders in toppling intergalactic governments. Not to mention it introduced one of, if not the greatest side characters ever in HK-47, a murder droid with a very low opinion of humanity. But more importantly, the game told an original story that felt worthy of the Star Wars name, like the original films. It was something new and fresh and full of discovery. It's the only thing in Star Wars that could possibly redeem the word prequel, unless you consider that massive lightsaber fight at the end of Revenge of the Sith between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think about this list and if I missed any games out. EA's Star Wars Battlefront was a very good game, but at the moment it just can't compete with the games in this list due to it needing so much added to it, which is coming through the Season Pass and free DLCs. Smash a like on this video if you have enjoyed it, and if you're new to the channel then make sure to subscribe to join the Axrora Alliance and be kept up to date with all things Star Wars. Other than that, may the Force be with you.